Good morning, lifestylers. The other day I talked about how to recognize the natural end point in a relationship. And I guess the biggest question is, well, how do you identify it? And in that video, I talked about how we often separate well past the natural end point of a relationship. But I'd like to actually rephrase whether or not it's the end point and ask, how do you recognize the natural turning points in a relationship? Now, for me, turning points are very easy to recognize in your own life outside of a relationship, because it's usually when things are either falling into place or falling apart. But when you bring in the dynamics of two people in a relationship and there are natural turning points, but we're not seeing those natural turning points because we may not be experiencing the natural turning points at the same time. Or when there's a natural turning point, there's resistance from one party, but there's a willingness from the other. And this is probably the biggest thing that I see in relationships when I am coaching individuals, is there was always a natural turning point to where one party wanted to go this way and one party wanted to go that way. And when you don't sit down and have an honest conversation about what's happening at this natural turning point, that's when things start to go sideways. And in relationships, we often see this when mutuality has been taken away from the relationship. And there is an excellent TED talk that I watched years ago where the lady was talking about mutuality and what happens when it's taken off the table. And the biggest area where we see mutuality taken off the table is when one party in the relationship loses interest in having an intimate relationship. And so they unilaterally decide that they're just not going to have sex with their partner anymore. But there was no conversation ever had around what that looks like for the relationship, what that looks like for the party that still wants to have a intimate sexual relationship, and what's going to happen if the party who still wants it goes out and finds it elsewhere. And we see this a lot. We see a lot of affairs statistically in office scenarios, any kind of workplace, any kind of environment where we spend a lot of time with people who may be experiencing the same thing that we're going through. Because vibrationally, like attracts like. So if you have two people working in an office environment or any kind of work environment, day in, day out, and they're coming to work and person A starts whinging about their wife and person B starts whinging about their husband, and person A and B realize we actually are going through the same thing, they start feeding off each other's unhappiness, but then the relationship starts to morph into, well, maybe this person could meet the needs that I'm not getting at home, because they resonate with what the other person is going through, what the other person is missing in the relationship, and that's often how a lot of affairs start. But I just want to wind you back to taking mutuality off the table. How about, rather than just unilaterally deciding you're going to do something in your relationship, or in this case, not do something, what if you could actually comfortably have a conversation with your partner about what's going on for you? And from that point, you work towards, what do we do about it? I know it sounds simple, but in practice it's very hard. And the reason why it's hard in practice is because we're so wounded from previous relationships, previous friendships. We are so wounded from so many things prior to this relationship even coming into existence that we retreat because we're scared of rejection. We're scared that the other person is not going to understand, because usually we don't understand what's going on inside of ourselves let alone being vulnerable enough to tell someone how we're feeling and hope that they respond in a way that we want them to respond. So I guess where this is leading to is issues in marriages are never about the actual relationship. Most issues in relationships will be about the individuals and the individuals where they're at, where they've been, and where they want to go. So if you've resonated with what I've been talking about in this video and you feel like you're ready to let the past go in order to live the life that you want versus the life that you've been living, then click on the link below and test drive for 7 whole days our Trusting Your Intuition in Relationships. This is a short online course that you can watch anytime, anywhere, in the comfort of your own home. And it's going to bring so many aha moments in such a short amount of time that you're going to realize the problem hasn't lain outside of you, it's always been inside of you. And yes, we all love to blame our parents for our problems, and guess what? You're probably right. Click on the link below to find out exactly where your problems are coming from and what you can do about it. That's it for now. I'm Lisa Q, and have a fabulous day.